The Macabre Tale of 1877, the Appalachian Mountain Lord who peddled hides that weren't from any animal. Before we dive into this chilling tale, hit pause for a second. Where are you listening from right now? City, state, or country? And what time is it there? Drop it in the comments below. I love knowing where this Appalachian legend sends chills up your spine. Oh, and subscribe with the bell on for notifications on the next macabre stories. Don't miss one. The autumn of 1877 hung heavy over West Virginia's rugged hollers like a shroud woven from the breath of the dying. Blackwood Hollow wasn't much a cluster of weathered log cabins huddled around a muddy crossroads where Black Fork Creek churned with silt and the ghosts of forgotten coal seams. The air bit sharp with the scent of damp earth, woods, and the faint rot of leaves piling knee-deep in the hollows. Fog rolled down from the higher ridges each dawn, thick as a preacher's guilt, swallowing the world whole until noon. Folks said it carried whispers from the war souls of boys who'd marched off to Gettysburg and come back wrong, or not at all. Elijah Kane knew those ridges better than his own scarred knuckles. At 28, he was a man carved from the mountains themselves, tall and lean, with a jaw set like granite and eyes the color of storm clouds over pine. The war had taken his left ear, leaving a ragged notch hidden under a mop of chestnut hair gone wild, and it had stolen his faith in anything softer than a rifle barrel. He lived alone in a one-room cabin perched on a sheer bluff above the hollow, where the wind keened through chinks in the logs like a banshee calling his name. Hunting kept him fed. Deer, turkey, the occasional black bear if the Lord was feeling generous, but game had been scarce that season. Summer's drought had driven the critters deeper into the laurel thicket, and winter's early bite promised lean times ahead. That crisp October morning, Elijah slung his Kentucky long rifle over one shoulder, powder horn at his belt, and trudged down the deer trail toward the hollow's annual trade fair. His boots sucked in the muck of the creek bank, each step a reminder of the world's unyielding grip. He'd bartered for salt and coffee last month, but today he aimed to sell a few pelts, poor things, thin and mangy from the dry spell, to scrape together coin for bullets and a new axe head. The fair was the only time outsiders trickled in, peddlers from Wheeling with calico cloth and whiskey, trappers from up in Pennsylvania, and the occasional circuit rider preaching fire and brimstone. As he crested the rise into Blackwood Hollow, the hum of voices hit him like a gust off the Monongah. Wagons creaked under loads of turnips and squash. Children darted between legs, chasing rolling sticks, and the air thrummed with the twang of banjos and the sizzle of hog fat frying in iron skillets. Smoke curled from a dozen campfires, mingling with the tang of fermented cider. Elijah's stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since dawn's scrap of cornbread. He made for the first seller's row near the creek, where grizzled men squatted on stumps, their wares spread on greasy blankets. Coonskins mostly, some fox, a brace of beaver tails waterlogged from hasty skinning. Elijah unrolled his own bundle, 3 gray fox and a bobcat decent enough, and hunkered down to haggle. But his eyes snagged on a newcomer at the row's end, a figure that didn't belong amid the familiar faces. The man was a mountain unto himself, broad as a barn door and taller than most, draped in a coat of patchwork hides that reeked of lye and wild musk, even from 20 paces. His beard hung to his chest, matted with burrs and streaked gray, framing a face etched deep with lines like knife cuts in oak bark. Eyes burned in those sockets yellowish, feral, like a coyote's caught in lantern light. He didn't squat or call out prices. He stood silent, arms crossed, while a small crowd of locals milled around his display. And what a display! Bales of hides stacked chest high, each one thicker and plusher than any Elijah had skinned in 20 years of trapping. What in creation? Elijah muttered, shouldering through the gawkers. Up close, the hides gleamed unnaturally, a silvery, gray pelt with an oily sheen that caught the weak sun like fish scales. He reached out, gloved fingers brushing one, soft as down, warmer than it should be, with coarse hairs woven in patterns that twisted under touch, almost like fingerprints. No, couldn't be. He jerked his hand back, heart kicking like a mule. The crowd parted for Widow Harrove, the hollow's sharpest tongue and busiest gossip. "Morning, stranger," she said, peering over her spectacles. "Them some fine pelts. Bear, no too sleek. Wolf, too thick. What's your secret then?" The man turned slow, lips peeling back in a grin that showed teeth filed to points, or rotted that way. His voice rumbled low, laced with an accent neither Yankee nor rebel, more like the hills themselves talking. "Call me the Mountain Lord, ma'am. These hides, they come from the fog-walkers, upright beasts what scream like menfolk in childbirth when the moon's hid. Skin 'em fresh off the ridges yonder, where no Christian treads." Laughter rippled, nervous, like, but Elijah felt a chill snake down his spine. Fog-walkers sounded like the old tales Granny Toiver spun by the fire. Feral folk, cursed souls from the war, skulking naked in the laurels, eating roots and raw meat. Fiddlesticks mostly. But those hides, he lifted an edge, peering at the underside. No stubble of follicles like proper furs, smooth as a man's palm, with veins faint blue beneath. "How much for a small un?" Elijah asked, voice steady despite the prickle at his neck. Coin was coin, and his traps were empty. The Mountain Lord's eyes locked on his, unblinking. "5 gold, boy, enough to buy your freedom from this hollow and start fresh down river. But mind, once it's yours, it chooses its owner." Elijah snorted, fishing a worn half-eagle from his pouch. "2.50, best I can do. Make it 3 paper and it's mine." A pause. Then the big man chuckled deep as thunder in a barrel. "Done, but heed. Don't cut it, don't burn it, let it breathe." The deal struck. Elijah rolled the hide tight, smaller than a saddle blanket, and slung it over his pack. The weight felt alive, shifting subtle, like with his stride. Folks whispered as he walked away, Elijah Kane buying devil skins, but he shrugged it off. Supper first, questions later. By noon, he'd traded his own pelts for meal, salt pork, and a jug of applejack. The fare wound down under gathering clouds, rain spitting cold from the west. Elijah trudged homeward, the new hide tucked under his arm like a secret shame. His cabin squatted on its bluff chimney, puffing lazy smoke from the banked fire he'd left smoldering. Inside, the single room smelled of pine tar and gun oil. A corn-shuck bed in the corner, a table scarred from knife work, a rifle rack on the wall. Possum stew bubbled in the Dutch oven. He'd check it later. He unrolled the hide by firelight, flames dancing shadows across its surface. Up close, details jumped out. Hairs longer than a bear's, matted in whorls mimicking palm prints. Hide thick yet supple, stretching without tear. A faint ridge down the spine like a man's backbone. Outlined, and the smell, musk heavy as a wet dog, undercut with something fouler, like grave dirt unearthed after rain. Curiosity burned hotter than the applejack he swigged. Elijah fetched his skinning knife, blade-honed mirror, bright, and prodded the edge. "Ain't no creature makes this," he grumbled. Tales from his pappy echoed. During the war, deserters hid in these hollers, breeding with hillfolk, or worse, birthing abominations that shunned light. Feral people, they called them. Naked, hairy, living off hogs and fools who wandered too deep. He sliced shallow, just a nick. Warm blood welled crimson, sticky, smelling of copper and salt. The hide twitched, not fluttered, twitched like muscle under skin. Elijah dropped the knife, hot hammering. "Lord have mercy," he whispered, backing to the door. Rain lashed the window now, wind howling counterpoint to a distant cry, half human, half animal, rising from the ridges, piercing the storm. A wail raw with pain, ending in a gurgle. Sleep evaded him that night. He bolted the door, loaded his rifle, and sat vigil by the hearth. The hide draped over his bedstead like a watchful eye. Dreams came feverish, yellow eyes in fog, hands grasping from laurel thickets, whispers calling his name. "Elijah, join us, shed your skin." Dawn broke gray and sodden. Elijah rose, aching, the hide unchanged but heavier somehow. He needed answers. The Reverend old Amos preached against such devilry. Or maybe track the Mountain Lord back to his lair. But first, the hollow folks would know if this stranger was kin to the feral tales. As he stepped out, a bootprint caught his eye in the mud, not his, nor Deer's. Broad 5-toed with a heel drag, like a man loping upright, leading up the bluff into vanishing fog. The mud clung to Elijah Kane's boots like a living thing that morning after the fair, cold and slick as congealed blood under a gray sky threatening more rain. Blackwood Hollow lay hushed below his bluff, smoke rising thin from chimneys, the creek a sluggish brown vein winding through the hollows. That print in the soft earth wasn't deer or bear. 5 broad toes splayed like a man's but elongated, heel dragged deep, as if the maker had loped on all fours before rising upright. Claw marks gouged the edges fresh enough to glisten. Elijah's pulse throbbed in his notched ear. The hide inside his cabin seemed to hum in answer, a low vibration he swore he felt through the floorboards. He slung his long rifle, powder horn rattling against the possible's bag, and knelt for a closer look. The track pointed upslope into the laurel hills, tangles of rhododendron so thick a fox would think twice. No use tracking alone in this fog. Visibility dropped to 10 paces, and the ridges hid God knows what since the war emptied the mines. Folks whispered of bushwhackers still roaming, or worse, the ferals those half. Men devils born of deserter stock and mountain inbreeding, stealing hogs and snatching stragglers. Elijah spat tobacco juice, tasting bile. "Ain't real," he growled, but his hand shook loading the pan. First light found him descending to the hollow, the hide rolled tight and stuffed in his pack like contraband. Blackwood's general store squatted at the crossroads, its false front peeling under ivy, shelves stocked with kerosene, axle grease, and bolts of homespun. Old man Harrove, Widow Hargrove's brother-in-law, leaned on the counter, whittling a cane from sycamore. His eyes narrowed at Elijah's mud-caked boots. "Cane, heard you bought that devil pelt. Folks talking already. Talk's cheaper than salt pork." Elijah replied, voice gravel, rough. "Seen the mountain lord since the fair. Where's he holed up?" Harrove chuckled, gap-toothed. Up Slaughter Ridgeway past the old Harper mine, cabin half fell in the '64 flood. Stranger rode in last full moon, wagon loaded with them hides, trades quiet, like takes gold, vanishes, some say. He's the feral king himself, skinning his own kind. Elijah slid a dime across for coffee. Bitter sludge boiled over coals. "Need supplies and point me to Reverend Amos. Something ain't right about that hide." The storekeeper jerked a thumb toward the clapboard church steeple, piercing the mist. "Preaching at noon, but mind yourself, Amos lost a boy to the ridges during the war, calls it devil ground." Elijah nodded, pocketing hardtack and bullets. Outside, the hollow stirred. Women in sunbonnets hauled water, kids herded geese. Blacksmith hammers rang like funeral bells. He passed Widow Harrow's porch, where she rocked with her sewing, spectacles glinting. "Elijah Kane, that pelt eaten your sleep yet?" He tipped his hat, forcing a grin. "Just warm in my bed, ma'am. Warmer than any coon's skin." She cackled. "Burn it, boy. My grandame skinned one like it in '52. Found it wrapped around her cat next morning. Empty inside." Chills spidered his neck, but he pressed on to the church. Reverend Amos Black was a whipcord of a man, late 50s, his face seeming like old leather from years circling the mountains on muleback. His flock called him the Ridge Rider for braving hollers where sin festered thick. Inside, pine pews held a dozen souls, farmers, miners, widows, the hollow's weary spines, singing Amazing Grace. Off-key as rain patted the tin roof, Amos spotted Elijah in the back, gray eyes sharp as flintlocks. Sermon done, he cornered him by the baptismal font. "Kane, you look like you've seen the Reaper. What's weighing?" Elijah hesitated, then unrolled the hide on a pew, careful none spied. Amos's breath hitched. He traced the whorls with a calloused finger. The pastor's hands bore powder burns from defending his flock against raiders. "Lord preserve us, this ain't beast, feel the grain human, like but twisted, where'd you get it?" Mountain lord at the fair called 'em fogwalkers, sold cheap, warned not to cut it. Elijah spilled the night's twitching, the scream, the track. Amos paled, crossing himself old style, a popish habit from his Irish roots. Farrell's seen signs since the Rebs retreated. My boy Timothy tracked one in 63. Naked thing mant, all covered head to toe, eyes glowing, chased it to Harper Cave, found bones picked clean. Timothy never came home. Elijah's gut knotted, an ally gained. Amos was no fool. A rifle preacher who dropped 3 bushwhackers single-handed. Help me track, can't let this fester. The Reverend nodded slow. After dusk, fog's thickest then, but we take Widow Harrow's boy, young Jed. 16 keen eyes, knows the ridges like his palm, and pray, Elijah, this may be judgment's shadow. By afternoon, the trio gathered at Elijah's cabin. Amos with Bible and Navy Colt. Jed, a lanky whippersnapper with freckles and a squirrel rifle, quivering with boyish fire. Jed's ma had packed jerky and lanterns, kissing him fierce. Don't you chase ghosts, child. They set out at twilight, fog swallowing the bluff like a grave. Tracks multiplied, drag marks, heel gouges, claw marks in the creek mud, leading to a washed-out trail toward Slaughter Ridge. Laurel thickets clawed at their britches, thorns drawing blood. Wind moaned through hemlocks, carrying a wet dog stench undercut with rot. Elijah's pack thumped rhythmic, the hide warm against his spine. 2 miles in, Jed froze. Tracks fresher here, Mr. Kane. See handprint, 5 fingers but claws long as turkey spurs. Amos muttered Psalm 23 under his breath. Elijah knelt, rifle cocked. The trail veered to a clearing ringed by blasted oaks, war scars from artillery, trunks splintered black. In the center, a kill site, a deer carcass ripped open, guts strung like garland but no blood trail. Eaten clean, bones gnawed to splinters, human teeth marks mingled with fangs. Fog walkers, Jed whispered, voice cracking. Grandpappy said they breed in caves, stealing babies for stew. A twig snapped, they wheeled, nothing but mist, but eyes gleamed yellow. Twin pairs retreating uphill, Elijah's heart jackhammered. This was no coon or painter, close ranks, move quiet. Dusk deepened to pitch. Lanterns cast jittery pools. The trail climbed steeper, scree sliding underfoot. To the Harper mine mouth, a black gash in the ridge, timbers sagging like rotted teeth. Bats swirled out, squealing. Inside, air turned fetid. Walls wept moisture. Elijah's lantern picked out rusted rails, ore carts tipped, echoes bouncing wrong. 50 paces in, they hit pay dirt. A side chamber, floor littered with bones. Deer, hog, longer ones, too slender for bear. Skulls cracked open, brains scooped. In the corner, hides stretched on frames of branch and wire. Tannin vats of pine sap and urine. Dozens matching Elijah's, and a fresh one dripping, steam rising, shaped vaguely man, like from the knee up. Amos gagged, abomination, we burn this den. Jed whimpered, rifle trembling. Elijah gripped his shoulder. The boy needed steadying. Breathe, lad, we're your backbone. Then a low chuckle echoed from deeper black. Tread soft, valley folk, you found my tannery. The mountain lord loomed, axe in fist, naked to the waist under his coat of scraps. Muscles corded like roots, tribal scars across his chest. Yellow eyes matched the watchers. Hide chose you, Cain, now joined the fog. Shed your weak skin, chaos erupted. Jed fired wild, bullet ricocheting. Amos drew his Colt, thunder filling the cave. Elijah's rifle barked true, grazing the lord's arm, blood black as tar. The giant roared, not in pain but glee, charging like a bull. They bolted, lanterns smashing, plunging into blindness. Claws raked Elijah's pack, the hide tore free, wrapping his leg like a snake. Outside, fog alive with howls, more eyes circling. Jed tripped, screaming. Amos hauled him up. Run, boy, to the hollow. Elijah slashed the hide loose, knife biting deep. It bled hot on his palm, visions flooded, a feral pack in a moonlit glade, birth in whelps that walked at birth, hunger eternal. They burst from the mine, tumbling down the slope. Dawn's first pink pierced fog as Blackwood's lights winked below. Safe, no, the mountain lord's bellow chased them. The pack comes, Cain, your skin next. Panting at Elijah's cabin, wounds bound, alliances forged in fire. Amos clasped his arm. This is war, brother. But what of the boy? Jed clutched a bone shard from the cave. A human finger filed to a claw, eyes wide with dark thrill. I'm in. The hollow's next if we don't end it. Elijah stared at his bloodied hand, veins burning. The hide's blood had soaked in, itching under his skin. Something stirred inside him, a hunger rising.